Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Today we have a very important subject, and it leads off from a lot of what we discussed out at Netroots Nation, which is the largest progressive meeting of activists and writers and you name it. That's what we do out there. And folks, we got a lot done. Not only did we get a lot done, but we educated. We made sure that people were aware. We emboldened. You name it, that is what we did out there, folks, and it was very successful. Let me tell you, it was very successful what we did. I'm kind of queuing a few things up here, so bear with me as I do such a thing, and we will get started very well in line as I go. So anyhow, today's show is going to be a great show because I met the national director of the Working Families Party. This guy is a guy who is really going to make things happen. And when people hear working families or whatever, they think, oh, that is a competitor maybe to what folks are trying to do as Democrats or as progressives. No fear whatsoever. These groups are working in concerts. All they're doing is trying to get that progressive message out, make sure that we're able to do that and do that effectively. And you know what? It was a pleasure working with these folks. It was a pleasure not only interviewing, like I said, I did 48 interviews. Actually, it's more than 48, but 48 official interviews out there, and we really started to launch things. Anyhow, before I get started with the program, I want to tell you something that really got me a bit concerned, and it has to do with a message that somebody left me on Facebook, and I don't have the message up as I'm looking here. I'm trying to find it, and I think I just found it, right? I got a message from a person named William Schroer. Well, I'm not going to call the name out on air, but anyway, it's on Facebook. I mean, so it's already a public thing, but I won't say it on air specifically. And he said, as long as you keep, and this was to a post that I left. He said, as long as you keep blaming everything on us old crackers, you ain't never going nowhere. I don't know where that came from because, like I said, I've never blamed anything on anybody specifically other than the system and the systemic issues that we have. So I replied to him and I said, I cannot fathom how that was the message you got from such a positive articulation of solutions based on the blog post that I had there. And he replied to me and he said, the message you give keeps giving even after a new message begins. When you demonize white people, that message is remembered long after those are forgotten. If that's how you want to gain your vote, go ahead. But math says you're gonna lose more support than you gain. I voted Democrat all my life, but when I go the reparations message, if it all change. Remember, there are more poor white kids than black, and you're supposed to stand up for all of them. Which anybody who listens to my show understand that the policies I talk about, that's exactly what I talk about. All of us uniting, getting together, joining. And I don't know if you've listened to me a whole lot. If you're listening, remember, my point of view is when we unite Appalachia, the ghettos, and the barrios, we would have won and we would have beaten the plutocracy. That is one of my phrases. So I think I'm right where you're saying. So I replied to him and I said, please point out where I have ever demonize white people. I want to know where you are hearing that. On reparations, I would love to hear what you hear when you hear the word reparations. And then he replies and he says, let's see what he says. He says, what exactly entitles a Das to reparation? Das means descendants of slaves. Do you think the families of soldiers who fought and died to help free another is owed reparations? And then I replied to him, that is actually a pretty darn good question. And those are the kinds of things that you have to entertain when you're having these types of discussions, right? You have to entertain those that were grieved, those that are poor because of systemic issues, those that are poor because of just economic issues. There are a lot of different things where these go into, and all of these things have to be massaged before before you ever talk about policy. So my thing is not to demonize people. My thing is not to do any of that. My thing is to be fair and have rational solutions to today's problems. And there's another thing that I really have to say, right? And that is, anybody who listens to my shows as well know that I think race is one of the most stupid things, because race is a very stupid concept, right? Pigmentation, and people will say other things. Culture is different than race. But race is a stupid thing. And the reason race is a stupid thing, I mean, there's a possibility that I could be able to, if you're a white person, that I could probably give you my heart if I drop dead, and your sister might not be able to. So race is stupid. But it is something that the plutocracy needs to separate people, create a delineation between people so they can control you. And those are the things that I preach against, or preach to try to inform folks on. Those are the things that I try to put out there. But I want to, before I go into the show, I want to say something that's important, because this is where Trump could be successful. A lot of people are talking about Trump is trying to excite his base, and that's why he's going racial. I think they've really missed the point. Trump is not going racial to explore or exploit his base, or to force his base to vote or any of that. The truth of the matter is, Trump already has his base. Let me tell you what the truth is. Let me tell you what Trump is doing. Trump is putting out cues so that folks like those who just asked me those questions on my page would have second thoughts. Trump is putting those messages out there so that white folks that are listening to this black guy will start listening with a different tuning fork. And that tuning fork is going to say, well, I wonder if he's getting racist. I wonder if he's getting racial. I wonder where he's come. That is what Trump wants to do. It's not about his people, folks. And that's what I need. That is why we have to educate our peers, because we look at the wrong metrics. And the wrong metric is to believe that Trump is trying to target his folk with those racial cues. Trump is trying to target the other side. He's trying to put questions into the minds of others. He's trying to have others question their progressivity or progressiveness. He's trying to have people question all those things. It's not his people, folks. And I need you to understand that. I need you to understand that what Trump is doing specifically is to, people talk about, I hear all the pundits on TV talk about, he's not growing his base. He's just talking to his base. No, he's not. Trump is not just talking to his base. Trump is growing his base with racism. That is his goal. It has very little to do with holding his base, which is already held. And that is the thing people have to get into their minds. That is what they need to understand. Because if you keep, and that is where I talk about the punditry does not know what they're talking about. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. And I want to get more people on who are listening to this stuff here, because it is imperative that they understand what is going on here. It is important that they understand what's going on here. Sorry for that. I was trying to get this stuff out. Because anybody who sits back there and believe, oh, Trump is just trying to excite his base is sufficiently excited. His base is sufficiently excited. So if you're just joining us, before I get into the show, I want you to hear this message, and I'm going to repeat it. And those of you that are already with me, please stick with me, because we have a very important show today. And well, we have a very important show every day. But I want you to understand what Trump is doing, okay? Too many people are sitting back believing. They're sitting back believing that Trump is trying to hold on to his base with racism. That is not what Trump is doing. Trump is growing his base. He is planting seeds into the mind of Democrats and everybody else, white Democrats specifically. He's planting seeds in their minds. And the seeds that he wants to plant in their minds is maybe that alliance that you have with all those multicultural people in your alliance, maybe your own demise. Those are the seeds he's planting. And what I need to tell folks is you have to get out of that realm. We have to help our people leave that realm. Because, again, forget about what the punditry is saying. Trump's base is stable. He's growing his base with the racial tack that he's taken. That is the goal of what he's doing. And I wish more people would understand how humanity works, how fear works, how all of that works, because then they would understand that what Trump is really doing is growing his base. And you know what? I think if we don't fight that, if progressives don't fight that head on, for that Democrat who's having a hard time, just like this guy came to me and said, why reparations? There are a lot of white kids already poor. Why am I going to even talk about reparations? Donald Trump is putting that cue in your head. When they talk about, oh, well, you want to give X amount of dollars or whatever to people, and then they make it believe it is biased towards one race. They're trying to put that in the minds of Democrats. They're trying to put that in the minds of folks who may vote progressive. And this is a fight. So don't buy into what they're saying. Anyhow, what is the program about today? The title of the program today is, and I'm pulling the program up right now because I had to lose it for a minute. But the title of the program today, and it's very important, the title of the program today is, come on up, program. Progressives win and will win if we fearlessly promote our values. Subtitle, many want to beat Trump by doing the purported safe thing, the definition of insanity. Progressives will win if they don't cower. Maurice Mitchell, Working Families Party National Director, knows how progressives win. While covering Netroots Nation 2019, I spoke to an impressive activist who is now the National Director of the Working Families Party. They have proven that being progressives, running as progressives who engage the people on the ground, win. We should not allow anyone to propose that we follow a mythical center to victory. It simply will not happen. And you need to add my earlier prose as well. And my earlier prose says as follows. Trump is expanding his base. The racial cues Trump is using is not for his people. It's for white Democrats who will be taught to take anything coming from the others as, oh, you're coming to attack me? A good reason to exit. He successfully did that. You know, when they talk about the Obama voters that went to Trump, those are cues that work. And they will continue to work. And we have to understand that. We must understand that, and we need to understand that very, very soon, folks. Please remember that. If we don't, we suffer at our peril. And for some reason, my phone is ringing and I can't get it to stop, but I'll get it to stop as soon as I can. So bear with me as I try to get my phone to stop ringing, but somehow it doesn't want to stop. There we go, it stopped. Great. But anyhow, folks, so I want you to hear this. Donald Trump is building his base. Anyhow, let me go to the video that we're going to be showing right now. And from that video, we'll move on to the rest of the program. But this is, I want you to listen to what this new national director of the Working Families Party has to say, and then we'll move on from there. Here it is. Welcome back to Politics Done Right. Folks, we have, I don't want to call it a treat because that's not what we say, but we have somebody here special. We have a special progressive, a progressive of progressives. This is Maurice Mitchell, who is the National Director of the Working Parties Family. Maurice, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Let me first tell you, I saw you at a conference here at Netroots Nation, and everybody who left that room was impressed, not solely because of your presence, but because of your message. Mm-hmm. What I want you to tell our audience here is, what does the Working Families Party represent first, and what you taking directorship of that means going forward?
Absolutely. So I could describe what we do in many ways, but in the same way that the traditional political establishment is very accountable to millionaires, billionaires, and corporations, the Working Families Party is accountable to everyday working people. Right? And we seek to sort of pioneer this idea of non-delusional third-party politics, right? So
explain that.
So what is a party, right? What ultimately is a party? A party is maybe four things. People who freely assemble to engage in electoral work, to advance a platform that is distinct, that is governed by a coherent ideology. Ideology is just the world, just the vision of the world that you want it to be.
Right.
When you're doing that, you're essentially showing up functionally as a party. So we are a party because we assert we're a party, and because we do electoral work in that fashion. And we elect grassroots candidates, many times primarying Democrats, right, who otherwise would never be able to run and win. People who have been on the margins of power, everyday working people, LGBT people, people of color, people with a radical political agenda that doesn't fit into the norms. We elect those people again and again and again on the local level and on the legislative level, all around the country. We endorse folks. We've endorsed more than 1,000 people last cycle, and we recruit and run people. And so, for example, Morgantown, West Virginia City Council, last cycle we won every single race in that campaign, in that election. Mm-hmm. That's Morgantown, West Virginia. That isn't Berkeley. That isn't Williamsburg. That isn't like a progressive center. The school board of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Wow. We won that. One of our national committee members, Mandela Barnes, is the lieutenant governor of Milwaukee. He's a 32-year-old black man named Mandela that has progressive values. Winning in the Midwest, winning in the quote-unquote blue wall, right? So the political orthodoxy tells us that in order to win with working class people in the Midwest, we need to be small with our politics. We need to deny our progressive values, and we need to just kind of engage in this sort of third way, small bore sort of issue agenda. Well, what we've seen, and we've proven it time and time again, that everyday working people want an agenda where a vision actually meets the demands that they're facing. And people are facing a crisis that is at an existential scale.
Right.
And so you can't witness this crisis at an existential scale and then give people Band-Aids, right? And give people small solutions. That's not going to inspire people to vote or to organize.
I want to make a comment to something. You said for radical ideas.
Yeah.
Is it really radical if that's what most people really want?
Well, in the most fundamental definition of the word radical, which means at the root.
Uh-huh.
Most people want root fixes.
Right.
When you want something fixed, do you want it fixed
halfway,
or do you want it fixed in a fundamental way?
You want it fixed.
Of course. And so the people that don't want root fixes is a very small niche group of very privileged people. Because when things are fixed at the root, when things are fixed structurally, it probably means that somebody somewhere is either sharing or giving up some form of power, right? And that somebody somewhere usually has access to a lot of power, and they want to constrain our ability to share in the bounty that is America. And so radical isn't extreme, right? The thing that is extreme centrism, extreme corporatism.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Simply responding to the urgent callings of everyday people is the most sensible thing you could possibly do. Choosing to find a problem and decide we're going to fix it for good is the most sensible thing you could possibly do, right? So the radicals, the true extremists are the people who are extremely centrist and ignore. In order to ignore the beating heart of the grassroots, millions and millions of people, you have to be extremely tone deaf. Right. So they use the language of extremism with us,
Right.
but what we're talking about is common sense. Every day is where most people are at, but it isn't where the establishment, it isn't where elite opinion makers on
Right.
television are at. And so if you're reading the papers, if you're watching 24-hour news, if you're in elite opinion conversations, then that conversation is on another planet than the kitchen table conversations that people are having every day.
You used an example today that I want you to use to our audience right
Yeah.
now. It's very important. You're walking home, you go into your mother and father's home.
That's right.
And you watch them watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
You watch them watching a bunch of elitists telling them what is wrong with them who
Yeah.
have never ever lived their experience.
That's right. I mean, it's one of the things that I remarked on. So my mom and dad are working class immigrants. They're both naturalized citizens. They love voting. They love
I
watching
was
the
curious,
news.
what country did I say?
From Trinidad and Grenada in
Got
the
it.
Caribbean,
Okay.
right? And so they're watching. They're like news junkies. They're watching the news, and they're witnessing elite opinion makers talk to other elite opinion makers around what do working class people think. What are communities of color like? What are the beating heart issues in communities of color? Like how do we advance the working class vote? Elite folks talking to elite folks about us, right? And to me, I find that to be really problematic, right? And so we need to break that echo chamber, the elite echo chamber,
Right.
and we need to have conversations that reflect our lived experience back at us. You know, it's like we are experts at our own experience.
Right.
And we don't need elites telling us how we should feel about our politics. We know because we experience it every day. And so one of the tricks is folks convincing us what's electable, right? I think that a lot of the support that Joe Biden is getting is based on everyday people not necessarily preferring him, but believing the elite chatter that a small bore policy white guy with a steady hand on the ship is what America needs and what America would tolerate.
And don't you also think they think that, well, the trade-off they're willing to make now is that the only guy that they think or been made to believe can beat Trump?
Yeah, I mean, because they're hearing it over and over and over again. But they personally,
Right.
if you ask them, okay, cool, but who do you
different
actually
story.
value? Who would you actually want to win?
Right.
And it's like, oh well, I mean, if I could have it my way, Elizabeth Warren or Bernie, but Biden's the guy that's going to do it. That's an
Exactly.
amazing disconnect. And I've talked to so many people. It's rarely that I meet like a true
Supporter of Bernie. I'm not a
true
supporter of
Biden person, right? They're like, yeah, Biden to me is the person I think most American. But if most Americans are saying my actual choice is another person, what would it mean if we broke down and challenged the orthodoxy around electability and say, well, electability is actually based on who everyday people actually believe in, right? And if we could harness that energy, because when you campaign for somebody you actually believe in, you're not just voting for them. You're telling everybody. You're
Right.
telling your mama, your cousin, everybody about them. You're knocking on doors for them. You're giving your small dollar donations to
Right.
them. That's how we win. We build a movement.
Now, Maurice, let me ask you this now with regards to the Working Families Party.
and the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
How are you symbiotically existing, and meaning you are sort of considered the progressive wing of the party in some extent?
Sure. So let me explain this, right? We recognize that we live in a very entrenched two-party system.
Right.
Right? And for decades and decades, there's state by state, there are all these election laws that prevent all types of interesting political opinions and third parties from emerging.
Right.
So we recognize that that's a fundamental challenge, right? What we like to do is cook what we have in the kitchen.
Right.
Right? So one of the things that we do is we engage in Democratic primaries as a site of struggle.
Right.
And we target corporate Democrats and other people who aren't accountable, and we surface our own working families folks to run against them on a progressive agenda, right? So that's number one. Number two, over time, we absolutely want to transform party politics. We want to transform party politics.
Right.
So more upstarts and third parties could actually exist in a way where the spoiler dilemma doesn't exist.
Right.
So fusion voting, ranked choice voting,
Ranked
and other
choice,
things.
yeah.
That's a structural change that we believe in.
Right.
But in the meantime, we think that there's an interesting fight within the Democratic Party. There's two sets of people. There's people who think the Democratic Party could be reformed,
Right.
and there's people who think that it's naive to imagine that a party that's so corporately captured could ever really
What
be.
is your thought?
So I have an opinion on that.
And I want your opinion on that.
So I believe that I believe both things.
Right.
I believe that, of course, like any institution, the Democratic Party can be reformed.
Right.
Any institution can be reformed.
Right.
And I'm not so cynical. I believe in transformative change. I'm not so
Right.
cynical that I don't believe institutions can be reformed. However,
Right.
just like a tree branch, right? Like if you could manipulate the branch of a tree in many
Right.
different directions,
Yeah.
but there's a point of rupture.
Where
If you
rupture-
pull that branch too far, it'll break.
Yeah.
That's the same for any institution.
Right.
That's the same for the Democratic Party. So there's a point of transformation that might cause a rupture in the Democratic Party. You have to understand the Democratic Party has within this big tent folks in Wall Street and people who identify as a democratic socialist,
Socialist, right.
right?
That's-
It's a really, really big tent.
Right.
And so if the left faction in the Democratic Party builds steam
Right.
and organizes and continues to reform the Democratic Party, there may be a point of rupture, which
Right.
is why institutions like the Working Families Party is so essential.
And it's ready.
And it's ready,
Right.
so if that point of rupture does happen,
There is a place.
those forces have a safe landing. Now, if that point of rupture doesn't happen,
Right.
or if that point of rupture takes years, you need independent electoral vehicles constantly moving our entire politics, not just
Right,
the Democratic
right,
Party,
right.
further to the grassroots.
Right.
And so it's essential to me, the corporations of Wall Street are always going to fund the Democratic Party,
Right.
right? Everyday, like working people, the people that are listening, you need to invest in vehicles like the Working Families Party and other vehicles.
Talking about investment in your vehicles.
Yep.
What states are you in currently?
We're in 14 states and we're
14.
growing, right?
Now, are you in Texas, by the way?
Yeah, we're in Texas.
Okay.
So we have a staff operation in 14 states and growing, and we have activists in every single state, right? And one of the things that I'm doing, I've become a director of the national. I've become a national director of the
So
party.
you run the party.
I run the party. I'm the national director. I started in August of last year. So one of the things I'm doing to transform the party is I'm building tools, and we'll be offering these tools soon to people wherever you are, even if you're not in a state where we have a staffed operations,
Right.
where you could pull down the tools of the party and begin to party build on the hyper-local level, in the neighborhood level, on the municipal level.
Let me ask you a technical question
Yeah.
here, because right now we've been building a whole lot of precinct chairs and so forth under the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And there's some rules as far as being affiliated with any other party. What are you?
Sure.
Are you guys considered a party, or
So-
how does it work?
So there's a short answer to that, which is there's fusion voting, and in 4 of the states where there's fusion voting, New York, Connecticut, Oregon, and South Carolina, we are a political party in every single way.
Right.
Fusion voting means that you, as an elected official or somebody running for office, you can be endorsed by a number of parties.
Right.
Which means you have to do the spoiler thing.
Right.
Because you could be a Working Families person and also be endorsed by the Democrats.
Right.
So in places where there isn't fusion, we don't have party status in that way.
Right.
But regardless, we work. The reality is that we work with people where there's a common interest, and we often have a common interest with Democratic parties in states
Right.
all over the country, right? Or folks who identify as Democrats in states all over the country.
Right.
Sometimes our interests don't rub together,
Right.
right? And we have those battles, you know.
Give me an example.
So we primaried the incumbent Democratic governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Right. Good. Good job.
And in that primary fight, although our candidate didn't win, Andrew Cuomo had to spend $30 million of
And he
his
had to
campaign
move his
cash,
position.
and he moved his position
Yes.
radically. He did 180s on marijuana.
Right.
He did 180s on a number. We call it the Cynthia effect because
Right.
we
Cynthia
endorse
Nixon forced him to move.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that
I
shows.
interviewed her back in that last year.
Great. So that shows how our politics are effective,
Right.
right? We are willing to have those fights.
Right.
You know, we're not going to unilaterally disarm
Right.
against the corporate faction of the Democratic Party for false unity.
Right.
We think those fights need to happen, and we need to fight the far right.
Right.
Both and, right? And so we take on those fights. But in other places, especially when the Democrats are out of power, listen, it's a united front.
Absolutely.
It's a united front, and
Right.
we're more than happy to form an electoral united front with any faction that's interested in fighting the ultra right wing. What we want to do, so people talk about how Texas is going to eventually become blue,
Right.
right, and how Georgia may become blue.
Right.
We're not satisfied with that.
Right.
We're not
You
satisfied.
want a progressive blue in Georgia and a progressive blue in Texas.
Absolutely. We're not satisfied simply by shifting from Republicans to Democrats in state houses.
Which again, the establishment is the establishment,
Yeah.
is the establishment party notwithstanding.
Yep.
Maurice, give my audience. I mean, that was a great intro that we had to you here at Netroots in the Daily Coast room. Give our audience a reason. Give the audience a reason for following what you guys are doing, for supporting what you guys are doing, and for contributing to the people you support.
Absolutely. So, listen.
And first of all, for the newcomers, who you are, again.
Yes. So my name is Maurice Mitchell. I'm the National Director of the Working Families Party. So there's some people that say the definition of insanity is doing the same things and expecting a different outcome. Right? So for generations, we've done the same things, and it's led to a Trump presidency, to the ultra far right taking control of the federal government, right? And us being at the losing position in many, many ways as a movement. And so I encourage everybody to do things very, very different in their politics. One of the things that they could do is support the Working Families Party, become a member, and support our candidates, right? We reflect politics as we desire it actually to be, right? So if you want to engage in politics in a way where you feel grounded in your values and you actually win, we're winning elections, and you do it on your terms, this is the place to do politics in a way that aligns with our values. And that I would encourage everybody to do that. And if you believe that aligning with our values is the way that we take back the heart and soul of this country, then come to Working Families Party. We're growing, we're building, we have aspirations to be in every single state, and we could only do it in partnership with everyday people like the folks who are watching right now.
Maurice Mitchell, National Director of the Working Families Party.
That's right.
Thank you so kindly for being with me.
Thank you.
friend.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Okay, folks, that was Maurice Mitchell, and I tell you what, he gave a speech, and you can find it on my webpage as well, egbertowillies.com, where he spoke to the Daily Coast caucus at Netroots Nation, talking about the working. And again, remember, the Daily Coast is a Democratic website, Democratic Party. I mean, we support the Democratic Party at Daily Coast. And he is now a part of the Daily Coast family. We just created a new site called Prism, where we're giving voices to people all over the country that normally don't have a voice. The thing about it is this is a group, the Working Families Party, that works in concert, as they said. Most of the times they run under the Democratic banner, but what they are is decidedly progressive. Decidedly progressive. You may want to go ahead and look it up. Working families parties. Now, I'm going to get back into that issue that I started the program about as far as with Trump. But beforehand, I just wanted to make some comments about progressives. Right? We are today, or somebody sent me a notice today from NPR that says, again, progressives need to heed this. Most Americans aren't where you're at, and then they brought a poll from NPR, and the way the NPR interpreted the poll, it's like Democrats support all these progressive values by 80, 90% or whatever, and then independents support these polls by 40% or something like that, right? So what they're trying to say is that, do remember, folks, that most people don't support your values. And then the Republicans may support it by, let's say, 20 or 30%. And the gist behind the story is that somehow most people don't support what you're supporting. But when you do the aggregate addition, when you do the addition of the numbers, most people do support. Even if it is that Democrats mostly support these progressive values, and just a plurality of independents and Republicans support it, it's still a majority who support it in the country. But what I've always told people is be careful with the reporting, because even an institution like NPR, even an institution like these newspapers, they're not going to lie to you specifically. The good rags, the NPRs, the New York Times, the Washington Post, what they will do is they will cater the data in such a manner that you are being misled. Don't let anybody fool you. The reality is, most Americans, the vast majority of Americans, when you give them the individual policies that progressives support, those are the policies they want. Now, it is our job not to allow the mainstream media, the right wing, or the establishment of the Democratic Party to hoodwink the working class, whether that working class be Republicans, whether that working class be independents, whether that working class be Democrats. We progressives support the working class. We progressive support the masses. We are in this not for just about, we're not in this to fool people. And I want folks to start preaching something else. Why would we just want to come out with policies that would harm folk? Why would progressives want to just come out with we are not coming out with policies that are saying, oh, we want to take stuff away. We are coming out with policies that say equitable distribution of the resources that belong to us all. That is what we support. Now, that may sound a little fancy. In other words, we don't want you to get more than you deserve, and we don't want you to be able to take more than you haven't earned. And I think everybody can deal with that message. And I think it's incumbent upon progressives to be able to get that message out there and tell folks, we're not asking for handouts, we're asking for what is ours. We're not trying to limit folks from what they can make. We're just saying you run within an economy and you didn't do it all on your own. It is so important that we get that message out. Because right now, more than anything else, we have people trying to fool folks. Okay, I got a caller here. Let's go to the call. Come on in, 973.
Berto, how are you
Johnny,
today?
talk to me, sir.
Excellent job, excellent program. I love the stuff that you're doing once again. But I do feel like I have to chime in with a little bit of bad news about what I think America is trying to do. And to a certain extent, this experiment of self-government, this is really what in the end, we keep getting into these existential conversations about what is the purpose of government and can the people be trusted to rule themselves.
Right.
And so this idea of self-government, when you see a buffoon like Trump get into position, and then you see him do these awful things that he has done, and then you hear the silence by the majority of Americans, I mean, it's a little bit off-putting, you know? And I'm going to tell you, to watch him attack elected congresspeople, I should say, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Did you hear the beginning
and so
of the program,
I'm saying,
Johnny?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Where I
yes,
said
I
that.
did. And I wanted to take you. I actually wanted to take you to task a little bit on that.
Please do.
Because unfortunately, when I hear a little bit of white America complain, why are these black people talking about reparations? We have the majority. We're not giving them that. That's not how any of this works. And when I hear people say that, I can only come to one conclusion. They haven't actually done the work. They haven't done the sincere work of actually looking at why reparations is the right thing for all of America.
Johnny,
I don't even want to get into.
No, you're right.
I don't want to
Johnny,
get in.
I want to stop you there though, because here's what I want to say. Because I asked the guy who wrote that message to have a discussion, because I wanted to have the discussion. Here's the thing.
Right.
You are a very smart person, okay? And as a smart person, you understand concepts. I mean, but if you were to ask the average black American, and notice I didn't even say a poor black American, I said the average black American, to explain reparations and the reasons why and how it go down, they would be just as ignorant in making that explanation as a white person is ignorant in making that explanation. Here's what I'm trying to tell you, Johnny. The reason I didn't take offense to when that guy said there are a whole lot of white kids that are poor as well, so why do I even want to worry about talking about reparations when you have poor black kids and poor white kids? I understand fundamentally that they don't get that they don't understand it. But here's the funny thing about it. Black folks don't get it either. So if we start taking the position of we are going to allow people to throw out all the negatives without having an initial judgment. In other words, that is what I want to do with the program. I want white people to call in and said, why am I want that question that white guy had, and then have a Johnny come on and say, okay, my friend, this is why there is a difference. Because my contention is, let me finish. My contention is the problem we have in this country and the racial problem, which, as I've mentioned, race is a stupid thing, but the racial problems we have is that people are not communicating. In other words, all this stuff is left to fester. And if a black person is scared of saying something, or a white person is scared of saying something and they are quiet, we get nowhere. I want folks to be able to make the mistake and sound stupid as I sound sometimes. Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, I think that's a fair point. And the thing that I would just say to you is, you know, it's funny who gets to judge what we're talking about.
Yes.
And on the one hand, you're right, there are plenty of black people who are just not intellectually or academically situated that they could really have this kind of discussion that you have every day. And you do it so easily. It just makes me say, see, there's a man right there with an engineering background, with probably not a lot of training in social studies growing up.
Exactly.
But here you've turned the corner and you've allowed yourself to become not just a learned person, but dare I say, I mean, you're getting pretty close to expert, because at the end of the day, between the books that you're reading, the people you're interviewing, you're doing a great job. And the reason why I'm saying that is because ultimately the judge for you and for me will be history. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when you look back at these videos and the stuff that you've done, you're going to look back with pride and say, look, I was on the right side of history.
Right, and you are on the right side of history. And the thing about it, though, is what I don't want to do, Johnny, is, and I want folks to be able to come to the right side of history. History has not been good to many. And
agreed.
And what I'm saying, if you notice, I always talk about victims and who are victims. Yes, from a financial standpoint and all of that in the aggregate, how white people have done better than black folks in the aggregate, but many are still as well the victim of our system. And if we,
of course,
and if we can, and you know, when I'm able to put all these discussions to show how it was just a matter of using them for a few to attain a goal, I can reach more people, and that is what I'm trying for.
Absolutely. And then I would just simply say to you, I would also encourage you to continue doing what you're doing and never be discouraged by the occasional person who hasn't necessarily had the time or opportunity to put the work in to come to the conclusions that you've come to. And I would also point out that we are in the middle of, I don't want to say necessarily a revolution, because it's not really a revolution, but it's an evolution. You know,
right.
History doesn't stand still.
Right.
And so what we're seeing here at this time in our capitalistic history, we're evolving. And so when you get a person like Trump, he ruptures the system because, you know, one of the things that Barack Obama and previous presidents have been very good about is, okay, there's some things we need to do, but we're kind of moving forward and kind of staying on that line.
But you know what?
And when you put a person like Trump...
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
When you put a person like Trump in power and he causes these kind of disruptions, the ancillary effects of his disruption. So on the one hand, yeah, he's radicalizing white America, parts of white America, not all white America,
right.
Of course, but some parts of it, 33%, they're being radicalized. But there's also going to be a radicalization of black people. There's going to be a radicalization of Latino people. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Scarface. It's a horrible reference.
Yes, I have.
But the point was, But the point was that, you know, how did Scarface come to America? It was actually a political situation, the boat lift.
Right.
And so when you look at the makings of that, I say to myself, now what happens if one of those kids that's being locked up in the internment camps on the border right now, what if one of those kids has great intellectual potential and that kid doesn't get an opportunity to attend an elite school like University of Texas, and that kid goes into the underworld? That's how you get an El Chapo.
And you know,
and I'm
something
just
else?
saying to people, we have to.
You hit something. That's a very important statement. And what we are doing down there, in the way we are treating some kids, the ones that are going to remember, that is the impression that they're going to be left with America.
Woo!
And here's the thing.
Yes.
Those are the people that will come back at some time. Let's say we deport them. They may be the ones that come back and do us harm for what we hadn't done as far as the benign thing.
Absolutely.
And you know, we don't, I mean, for
Absolutely.
every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That part is
Exactly.
and people don't get it, you know, and you know, yesterday we were watching the Weather Channel, right? And on the Weather Channel, we saw this meteor that hit a particular city in Russia. And then I started thinking, right? And I started thinking there is so much that America talks about, how great we are and so forth, right? And I started to think, suppose we just happen to get hit by 3 meteors. One hits Houston Ship Channel, the other one hits New York City, and one hits somewhere in California, right? We are going to have such a mass migration wanting to get the hell out of Dodge, hitting Mexico. Suppose that treatment that we are given is a treatment that we get to see. We don't look at our own potential vulnerabilities ever, and that is why I believe in always being good, always being treating people right.
Exactly, and always siding to justice and truth and equality. And I would just like to say to people that as much as climate change looks like it could potentially be the thing that undoes us, I would potentially point out to people, you know, people don't pay attention to this, but I would put antimicrobial resistance as being just as impactful as any type of climate change. And nobody's really talking about
Absolutely.
it. Right. And I'm just saying to people, this could be the thing that undoes us because we don't have a bunch of answers. And don't get me wrong, I always believe that in a clutch situation, the American way will find a way. But I mean, my goodness, we are playing with fire. It's not getting any play in like the regular media. And I just feel like these are one of these kind of issues where it could happen anywhere.
Well, you know why it doesn't
and the
get
way
any
things
play?
are going,
Because to get any play, if we're going to get play on this microbial thing, what it means is, okay, maybe we need to stop giving all those drugs to these animals to fatten them up because it's going to change it. Maybe we have to stop using so many different antibacterials and all that kind of stuff because it's going to cost the corporations money from sales. And that's why you're not going to hear
now,
much
one last thing. One last thing, Berto.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of the story, but the New York Times had an article the other day, and they talked about this small town in Virginia of about 5,000, 6,000 people in it. And the local Walmart there imported over 4 billion opioid pills.
Yes,
and
I
you
saw
can
that.
track the opioid addiction in that town increasing as Walmart increased its import. So what I'm saying to you is that cannot be happening by accident.
But here's the funny thing about that
And
story.
I'm saying,
It's funny about that story, Johnny, that Walmart knew the numbers. They actually knew the numbers. They didn't go and look it up after the fact. They knew it as it was happening.
and I would argue to you, Berto, that is a glimpse of how they're sedating the Midwest.
There you go.
The Midwest is being sedated into an opioid fugue, into like an opioid addictive, and I'm saying that's not by accident, because in order to push this new agenda, you have to sedate people and addict them.
Hey, I am not going to argue with that at all. I'm not going to argue with that at all. But anyhow, it's coming close to the time where I have to kind of wrap things up, Johnny. As usual,
sorry. I just wanted to point that out there.
You always add to the program, so thank you so kindly for calling in, my friend.
Thank you for having me, and have a good day. Take care, brother.
All right, brother. Have a good one. Folks, I want to reiterate something that I said before, because I think this is so important, and I want those of you who are listening to me to really go ahead and push this message out. The punditry is, in my humble opinion, the punditry is incorrect. In my humble opinion, and I really want you to spread this word. I beg you to spread this word. Because, and specifically, my white brothers and sisters, I need you to spread this word. Because this is what Trump is doing. And while everybody is ticking on something else, remember what we said that Trump is good at? Look over there. You're not looking. Look over there. We are always a step behind, because it is all orchestrated. I need you to listen to me. Please listen to me, and please spread this word. The race card that he's starting to use has nothing to do with exciting his base. My white brothers and sisters, I need you to spread this specifically. Trump is not looking out for the racists that already follow him. He's not looking out to excite them. They are already excited. They already smell blood. They already feel like they can do it. Trump is going after you, good people. Trump is going after the white progressive. Trump is going after the white marginal person. Trump is going after that person that they think they can put a seed in your mind, so that the next time you have an argument, the next time you have you hear something that's off color, the next thing you have something that gives you a bit of angst, whether maybe a little bit of racial angst, that seed he's planted on you will be activated, and you will join the fold, because at that point, your carnality, that part of your brain is going to tell you, oh man, those others, existential for us white people. That is where he's aiming. It's at you, my white brothers and sisters that are listening to it is a conversion that he's trying to get at. So what I'm asking you, share and let folks know. Let the people that you know the closest, the people that have the most trust in you, let them know what's going on. Inoculate them. Inoculate them from what Trump is doing, and disregard the mainstream media that is trying to make you believe that somehow Trump is going or trying to activate his base. He is growing his base. Trump is growing his base. If you doubt it, the numbers don't lie. When Trump began to go racial, his Republican numbers poll ticked up. Did his other poll drop? No, they did not. Because those are going to take a little bit more work. They're going to take a little bit more work. But mark my word, it is important that you understand that the punditry on TV is wrong. The punditry on TV is wrong. He's not trying to excite his base. He's trying to excite you. Man, we got a lot of work to do. Man, we have a lot of work to do. We have to realize we got to keep Appalachia, the barrios, and the ghettos united, brothers and sisters, because the game is on. And he's playing with your minds, and he's playing with your vulnerabilities. Folks, please remember that politics done right, progressive media needs your support. We need to be able to articulate this to people. We need to be able to tell folks this stuff. It's so important that people understand what's going on here. Please support us by going to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Anybody who subscribe to us gets to read all our books online. As I see it, class warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. It's a class thing, folks. It's a class thing. Everything else is designed to keep that class going. All my books can be read online when you subscribe. How to Make America Utopia. That's a book that I'm writing. I've been on a hiatus from it for a while because I've had to travel to Netroots and some other things, but chapter 4 is in the works. And of course, I've lost a lot of weight because I had high blood pressure and all that good stuff. All these things I am doing to attempt to continue this program by raising funds to continue this program. So all these books and subscriptions that I have is to be able to maintain the program. Please go ahead also. Here are all the places how you can support us. You can support us by going to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is how you can subscribe to us. You can give us a contribution, a donation for the project at politicsdoneright.com/donate. Or you can go to our store and buy a cup, a t-shirt, any one of those things, or many t-shirts or many cups for your friends to support something that's positive, something that's doing something important at store.politicsdoneright.com. store.politicsdoneright.com. So I ask you again, my brothers and sisters, we need your support. We need your support. No, the cup is pretty nice. Check this out. This is our cup. That's our Politics Done Right cup. It's pretty nice. And we also have the t-shirts, pretty nice. All those good things are nice. So please subscribe. But I tell you what I really, really hope for, number one, subscriptions. We're at 100 subscriptions. I'd like to get us to 1,000 subscriptions as soon as possible because we need producer. We need a part-time producer. We need a part-time copywriter. We need a part-time social media person. Right now, I'm working 16 hours a day doing all those things. So you hear what I'm saying. Again, please go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. And I'm going to end the show today with the same beg, the same ask, specifically to my white brothers and sisters, I need you, please, to let folks understand that the punditry is wrong. The punditry is wrong. What they are doing right now is not exciting Trump's base. They are growing Trump's base. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.